We thought the 2012 ball was starting to roll, at least for Newt Gingrich, with the expected launch of an exploratory committee, but that apparently is on at least a temporary hold. The possible field has politicos on pins and needles trying to find out what the campaigns are going to do, when they're going to start. David Goodfriend is a Democratic strategist and former Clinton White House staffer, and Liz Mair is a conservative blogger at lizmair.com. We put them on the left and right to make it a little easier to keep track for you watching at home right now. And David, if I can, I'm going to start with you quickly. It just seems like everybody wants to hear something in terms of who's hinting at an official run. So I want to take a listen quickly to Mark McKinnon on Morning Joe today.
There is going to be an announcement tomorrow about a Republican running for president, but it's not anybody that you've mentioned.
Really? Who's that?
I'm just going to tease you. No, I'm going to let it tease you.
You can't do that on national TV.
Oh, yes, I can. Yes, I can. And I'm doing it.
You know what? I'm going to pose this to you, Liz, actually. There may be a surprise or two coming at some point, but is it money? Is it strategy? Why is this taking the GOP so long?
I think it's a variety of things. In part, the money concern is a very real one. It's expensive to run for president. You have to spend a lot of time raising money. I think particularly when you're looking at the possibility of having to run against an incumbent president who may raise and spend up to $1 billion on this, realistically, that's a good reason to maybe hold off on jumping in the game and having to start paying out consultants, paying for advertising, all of these kinds of things that really do cost. So that's a component of it. But I think also, you know, if you look at some of the names that are being mentioned here as prospective candidates, there are sort of personal and professional circumstances surrounding a number of them that mean that they do have to adjust their timing a little bit and push back a little bit more than what we've been used to seeing.
So let's get into some of those names. David, you can get into the conversation here now.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to note here just a couple of observations right up front before we talk about specific candidates. First of all, when you have a really young rising star in the Republican Party like Senator John Thune, who's got a real shot, say, no, I'm not going to go in this time. When you have a Republican Party that historically has coalesced around a leader very early, but now there is no one who even really has a plurality in any of the early polling. There's no real sense of direction. Those two things say that even though the rhetoric on the Republican side is that they want to attack Obama, there is an implicit recognition that President Obama is very likely to be reelected. It's going to be a very tough fight for a Republican.
Well,
so
David,
that's right up front.
Let's play out some of these scenarios. I mean, speaking of these possible 2012ers, you say John Thune, not in. Mike Huckabee, perhaps. His latest radio interview is making a lot of headlines. I want to play that and get your reactions to that on the other side. Take a listen to this from yesterday.
Don't you think we deserve to know more about this man?
I would love to know more, but what I know is troubling enough. And one thing that I do know is his having grown up in Kenya. His view of the Brits, for example, very different than the average American. His perspective as growing up in Kenya with a Kenyan father and grandfather, their view of the Mau Mau revolution in Kenya is very different than ours because he probably grew up hearing that the British were a bunch of imperialists.
If this is, as he says, the one thing I know, that he grew up in Kenya, we're in trouble. Clearly he grew up in Indonesia, went to college in California.
Let me just say this. I have appeared on Governor Mike Huckabee's show several times. I like Mike Huckabee, but it's so unlike him to just lie. It's really, he's a preacher, he's a man of the cloth.
So is this strategy in your opinion?
Above this. I think it is not in his nature to out and out lie, to say something that he knows is not true. I think it's indicative, though, of the perils of being in a Republican primary. You see, the center of the Republican Party has moved so far to the right that you have to say ridiculously absurd things, like what Governor Huckabee just said, in order to get the attention of your core voters. Then, assuming that process yields a nominee, that nominee then has to appeal to the broad general American public. Ain't going to happen. Yeah. The Republican primary process is the worst thing for the Republican Party, in my opinion, right now, because you're not going to get a moderate like a John Huntsman. You're going to get a radical, and that's too bad.
And I got to leave the conversation there for right now. We got till 2012 to talk about this, Liz. We're going to have you back again soon. We'll have plenty of opportunities. Thanks to both of you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.